Welcome to the Phil and H Travel Podcast, Is It Worth It?
Yeah, we're glad you're here with us.
What if you could get the world's third largest UNESCO-listed lagoon, like a pristine slice of the French Riviera, and these expansive, blindingly white sand beaches almost entirely to yourself?
Sounds pretty good, right?
Right. And what if you could do all of that for less than the cost of a weekend trip to Sydney? So, welcome to the deep dive. Today we are opening up a highly detailed, brutally honest, logistics-first dossier on a place that, well, it rarely makes the standard travel brochures anymore.
No, it really doesn't.
We are looking at New Caledonia in 2026 and into 2027, and the ultimate question we are trying to answer for you today is this. Is right now the absolute cheapest, best window in a decade to visit this Pacific territory? Or is the ground still just too politically raw, too complicated to risk your hard-earned vacation time?
It is the perfect question to anchor today's deep dive. We're looking at a really fascinating, completely unfiltered source guide today. It strips away all that usual, glossy tourism board spin.
Oh, I love that. Cut right through the marketing.
Exactly. Our mission today is to unpack the real U.S. dollar costs and the absolute reality on the ground in New Caledonia right now. We are going to examine this bizarre economic paradox of a place where a supermarket baguette costs literally pennies, but a local beer costs a fortune.
Which is just wild to me.
Yeah, it's crazy. We're also going to look at where to sleep, from Nouméa to the Isle of Pines in Lifou, and we'll dissect 3 massive, really specific logistics traps that consistently ruin the trips of first-time visitors.
Gotta avoid those.
Right. And crucially, we have to impartially examine a very fragile political landscape.
Yeah, because you can't just look at the price of a flight and ignore the actual reality of the destination. So let's unpack this and set the geographical stage for you, because the isolation here is a huge part of the story.
It really is the defining factor.
Yeah, so New Caledonia sits way out in the southwest Pacific Ocean, about 900 miles east of Australia. It is made up of Grande Terre, which is this massive 250-mile-long main island. To give you some context, that is roughly the distance from New York to Washington, D.C.
It's a lot bigger than people think.
It is. Then you have the Loyalty Islands and the stunning Isle of Pines. So all told, we are talking about 7,172 square miles of ocean and reef. But the dossier describes its political status as a sui generis collectivity of France.
Right, that's the official term.
Before we get into whether you should actually book a ticket, what does that mean? Because that sounds like legal jargon, but I have a feeling it dictates, well, everything from the currency to the current tension on the ground.
Oh, it dictates absolutely everything. Sui generis is a Latin term that essentially means in a class of its own.
Okay.
So in international law, it means New Caledonia is not a fully independent country, but it's also not just a standard overseas department of France like Martinique or Guadeloupe. It exists in this really unprecedented, highly complex political limbo.
Interesting. So they kind of manage themselves.
Partly. They print their own currency, the Pacific franc, and they have their own local government managing day-to-day affairs. However, mainland France still controls the military, foreign policy, justice, and secondary education.
Wow. Okay, so it's very split.
Exactly. And this dual identity creates an inherent structural friction between the indigenous Melanesian population, the Kanak people, and the descendants of European settlers, as well as recent arrivals from mainland France.
And that friction isn't just historical. I mean, it is playing out in real time right now. The research makes it very clear that to understand why this specific moment is such a unique window of opportunity to visit, we have to look at the really turbulent history of the last 2 years.
Yeah, the recent timeline is intense.
The numbers in the dossier paint a picture of total collapse, right?
The contrast is genuinely staggering. If you look at 2023, which was the territory's best post-pandemic year, New Caledonia welcomed roughly 126,000 international overnight visitors.
That's a solid number.
Right, and that doesn't even count the massive influx of cruise ship passengers.
Yeah.
The tourism engine was just humming. But then, the May 2024 riots occurred.
Right.
And these were deeply rooted in the political tensions we just mentioned. Following that unrest, the tourism numbers didn't just dip, they absolutely plummeted. And the political situation remains highly fluid today. The sources detail the recent collapse of the Bougival constitutional agreement.
Right, and let's clarify that for the listener because it's a vital context. The Bougival Agreement was an attempt to create a new framework, essentially a state of Caledonia within the French Republic, just to chart a path forward.
Yes.
But according to our dossier, that agreement officially collapsed just weeks ago on April 12, 2026.
Hmm.
Because that path forward disintegrated, fresh provincial assembly elections have now been firmly locked in for June 28, 2026.
And that creates a highly charged atmosphere. Which brings us to the elephant in the room. If the government's constitutional reform just fell apart, and these highly contentious elections are barreling toward us in late June, is it actually safe to plan a trip right now?
I'll be honest, if I'm listening to this, I am deeply skeptical. You are pitching me a destination that sounds simultaneously incredibly beautiful and incredibly fragile. Like, why would I spend my money to fly into a political unknown?
It is a completely fair apprehension, you know. We will get into the specific day-to-day safety protocols for travelers a bit later, but the reason you might consider it lies in the government's current response to the crisis.
Okay, what are they doing?
They are entirely focused on economic stabilization, and their primary lever for that is tourism. They have just rolled out an aggressive promotion plan, injecting over $8 million into the sector.
Wow, 8 million.
Yeah, their explicit target is to attract 250,000 tourists by 2032 to revive the territory's economy.
Okay, wait. A territory that just saw its tourism industry collapse and is actively navigating a political crisis is somehow finding $8 million to spend on marketing. Where is that money coming from? Because if I know anything about government bailouts, it's that the consumer eventually pays for it.
You are exactly right, and this is where the mechanics of the travel industry become crucial for you, the listener. To fund this massive revival plan, the government is introducing an Airbnb tax, and they are significantly expanding the cruise tax.
Ah, there it is.
Yeah, they're completely restructuring how tourism is taxed on the island to build this war chest.
So if I'm tracking the logic here right now, the taxes aren't fully implemented yet, or they haven't trickled down to the consumer, and the airlines are essentially offering loss leader pricing just to get bodies back on the beaches.
Yes, they are practically giving away flights.
But the second this $8 million promotion plan actually works and the tourists return, those new Airbnb and cruise taxes are going to take hold and prices are going to skyrocket.
Precisely. This exact moment in 2026 is a temporary window. It's a structural anomaly in global travel pricing.
That makes a lot of sense.
The airlines and hotels are basically absorbing the risk to stimulate demand. But once the demand normalizes, the era of cheap access to New Caledonia is over.
So you've gamed the system. You realize this is a unique window of opportunity. The next crucial decision is exactly when in 2026 to actually book those tickets. You can't just pick a random week.
Definitely not.
You have to thread a very tight needle between good weather, the cheapest flight promotions, and those critical political dates. Let's look at the seasons, because I feel like people just assume tropical islands are sunny all year round.
That is a very dangerous assumption in the South Pacific. The archipelago experiences two distinct seasons, and they dictate everything from your budget to your physical safety. The absolute sweet spot is the dry, cool season, which runs from May to October.
Cool being a relative term here.
Yeah, exactly. You are looking at daytime temperatures sitting beautifully between 72 and 79 degrees Fahrenheit.
That sounds perfect.
It is. The humidity drops significantly. The massive lagoons are glassy, calm, and perfectly clear for snorkeling. This is the optimal window to experience the territory. And importantly, the dry season aligns perfectly with the cheapest flight windows currently available.
Oh, perfect.
The promotional fares the airlines are using to lure people back are just staggering.
Let's put some real US dollar numbers to this, because the dossier has the receipts. Aircalin, the international airline of New Caledonia, is currently offering return fares from Brisbane, Australia to Nouméa, starting from just $370.
That's return.
Return. That includes all taxes, it is a direct flight, and it takes under 3 hours. For our Australian listeners, you are 2 hours and 35 minutes from Brisbane or 4 hours from Sydney, where one-way promotional fares for May 2026 are sitting at just $250.
It is remarkable. It is literally a genuine shortcut to a European cultural experience right in the middle of the Pacific. For listeners in New Zealand, it is under 3 hours direct from Auckland.
It's just wild that you can get to a French territory with a UNESCO lagoon faster than you can fly across the Australian outback.
It really is.
And for our listeners in the U.S., Qantas is running routes via Los Angeles to Nouméa for around $12,290 return. But we do have to contrast this dry season sweet spot with the wet season, which runs from November to April. Why is this period such a massive risk?
Because the wet season in the South Pacific is cyclone season.
Ah, yeah. That's a deal breaker.
Right, and if we look at the logistics of island travel, a cyclone doesn't just mean you get a little wet on the beach and have to read a book in your hotel room. Cyclones can and will ground the entire domestic airline fleet.
Oh, wow.
They cancel inter-island flights for days at a time. If you are out on the Isle of Pines and a cyclone hits, you are completely stranded. You will miss your international connection home.
That sounds incredibly stressful. A tropical storm trapping me in a room I overpaid for. No thanks. And the wildest part of the source data is that despite the weather being worse and the risk of being stranded being higher, the prices actually spike during the wet season.
Yeah, it's completely counterintuitive.
If you look at December round trips from Sydney, they push well past the $430 mark. You are literally paying a premium to take on weather risk.
It is driven entirely by the traditional holiday schedule. People traveling over Christmas and the New Year, rather than the quality of the destination at that time. It is a trap you really want to avoid.
For sure.
But if you stick to the dry season right now, you also benefit from the current crowd dynamics. The contrast to previous years is historic.
The numbers in the brief are crazy. In 2023, the territory saw 340,000 cruise passengers flooding the beaches and markets.
That's a massive footprint.
Yeah, but today, thanks to the unrest-driven collapse in tourism, the crowds are a mere fraction of that.
Outside of the rare days a cruise ship is actually in port, you will walk onto the legendary white sand beaches of the Isle of Pines, beaches that frequently rank in the top 10 globally, and find them almost entirely empty.
Just you and the sea turtles. But the dossier places one massive, blinking red warning light over this timeline. You must avoid travel around that June 28th, 2026 election date. The sources are absolutely unequivocal on this.
Right, very important.
Political gatherings in the capital of Nouméa around the provincial elections could significantly restrict your movement, cause road closures, and generally just disrupt the infrastructure.
It is purely a matter of practical risk mitigation. You do not want to be trying to catch a flight when a major political demonstration shuts down the main highway.
Okay, so let's say you've navigated all of this. You've dodged the June elections, you avoided the wet season cyclones, you booked that $370 promotional flight out of Brisbane for the dry season. You're feeling pretty smart.
Feeling great?
But the reality check hits you the moment the wheels touch down, because you aren't actually landing in the capital, are you? What exactly hits you when you step off the plane?
So the first physical reality you face is the geography of your arrival. You land at La Tontuda International Airport. It is surprisingly far from the capital, like a full 31-mile transfer south just to get into Nouméa.
That's a long drive after a flight.
It is. And on that long drive, the visual contrast of New Caledonia immediately presents itself.
The dossier describes it as though someone unbolted a wealthy suburb of the French Riviera and dropped it squarely onto a rugged Melanesian island.
That's a great way to picture it.
You are driving past traditional earth-dug bougna cooking pits on tribal land, but right next door there is a pristine, glass-fronted French boulangerie selling perfect croissants. You see shiny European Peugeots parked directly beside beaten-up, rugged pickup trucks flying the colorful Kanak independence flag.
The contrast is everywhere.
It sounds like a fascinating, almost jarring juxtaposition of cultures living side by side.
It is a highly unique vibe. But we also have to acknowledge the post-2024 reality of that drive and the city itself. When you arrive in Nouméa and head down to the famous tourist strips, the bays of Anse-Savata and Baie des Citrons, it is noticeably quieter than the bustling scenes of 2023.
You can feel the absence.
Yeah, you will inevitably see that some shop fronts are still shuttered, bearing the physical damage from the 2024 unrest.
Which is a sobering reminder of why you got the cheap flight in the first place.
Precisely. However, the dossier emphasizes that the essential tourist infrastructure, the main beaches, the remarkable Bougival Cultural Center, the bustling Port Moselle morning market, they are all fully operational. The city is functioning, it is just breathing a bit slower.
But here is a critical reality check for your wallet, and this might be the single most important logistical point we cover. Your US dollars or your Australian dollars will not work here, period.
Do not even try.
Do not expect to walk into a cafe, hand a barista an American $20 bill, and get change. The currency is the Pacific franc, denoted as XPF.
And the mechanism of how you spend that money is equally important. In North America or Australia, you're used to simply tapping your phone or your smartwatch for absolutely everything, from a coffee to a bus ticket.
It's second nature.
But the source material explicitly warns that card acceptance is incredibly patchy the second you step outside the capital city of Nouméa. If you go to the outer islands, cash is king.
So you have a different currency, and you need physical cash. But what is the actual purchasing power of that cash? Because this currency shift introduces what the dossier calls the remoteness surcharge.
We'll use a highly relatable, concrete example to illustrate the cost of living on the ground. Let's look at a standard cafe breakfast in Nouméa. You order a simple jambon beurre, which is a traditional ham and butter baguette, and a standard coffee.
Sounds delicious.
That will cost you around 1,200 XPF. When you convert that back, it is roughly 11 US dollars.
$11 for a basic coffee and a sandwich. That adds up incredibly fast.
It really does.
Yeah.
What you are experiencing at that cafe is French culinary quality. The butter is likely imported from Normandy. The flour is European standard, but it's sold at French mainland prices, with a massive Pacific shipping, logistics, and remoteness surcharge bolted on top of it.
The cost of isolation.
Exactly. It is the economic reality of maintaining a European lifestyle on an island 900 miles from the nearest major landmass, which itself is Australia, not Europe.
That remoteness surcharge ripples through absolutely everything you touch, but it hits hardest when you are looking for a place to sleep. The source material has broken down the accommodation landscape into a fascinating four-tiered reality check, using real 2026 US dollar prices and specific name properties.
It's a really helpful matrix.
Looking at this, it's clear you have to be very strategic. Let's break down this matrix.
Let's start at the entry level, the budget tier. We are looking at 55 to 95 US dollars a night. But we need to clarify what this is. This is not a cheap, multi-bed backpacker hostel in the city center. This price point primarily gets you into a tribal gîte.
Okay, what exactly is a tribal gîte? Because $55 is great, but what are we actually getting? Are we talking about a dirt floor and cold water? I want authentic, but I also want to know how roughing it actually is.
Well, it varies, but you should expect basic rustic conditions. Properties like Chesbella or Wanalai on the island of Lifou are prime examples. You are getting a simple bungalow, often constructed from traditional materials, situated directly on Kanak tribal land.
So it's very local.
Very. The bathroom facilities might be shared or very basic, but the trade-off is profound. You are sharing meals with the host family. It is deep cultural immersion.
That actually sounds really special.
Frankly, the data shows it is the only authentic cheap sleep available on the outer islands. If you want to stay on the main island, Grande Terre, the east coast town of Pointe-Nommea, has simple, independent hotels starting from around $57 a night.
I actually love the idea that the budget option isn't just a sterile bunk bed, but an actual cultural exchange. It filters out the tourists who just want cheap luxury. But let's say you want a proper bed, air conditioning, and a private bathroom. That pushes us up to the mid-range 3-star tier.
Yeah, this is truly the sweet spot of the market, running between 92 and 170 US dollars a night. In Nouméa, near the popular Antsevada Beach, you have options like the Ramada Hotel and Suites by Wyndham. If you are heading out to the Loyalty Islands, specifically Lifou, you have the Drohu Village Hotel.
And hold on, because this blew my mind when I read the research. Drohu Village is the only hotel on the entire island of Lifou. How is that even possible in 2026? It's a major tourist island. Why hasn't a massive international developer swooped in and built 5 different resorts along the beach?
It all comes back to the core structure of the society. We mentioned the tension between the French state and the Kanak people. A massive part of Kanak culture and legal reality is tribal land ownership. You cannot simply buy a stretch of beachfront on Lifou and build a Marriott. The land belongs to the ancestors, the tribe, and the local chief. It is deeply protected.
So they just can't get the permits.
Because foreign developers cannot easily acquire land, the supply of traditional Western-style hotels is artificially suppressed. Drohu Village is the exception, which is why if you aren't in a tribal gîte, you are staying there.
That perfectly explains the pricing power they have. Also in this mid-range tier is the Hotel Bougna on the Isle of Pines, situated right at the stunning Kudo Bay. And back in Nouméa, the Nevada Park is highlighted as a solid option. The source specifically notes that kayak deals for 3-star rooms there were found for just $100 a night in the last 72 hours.
That is incredible value for a French territory. But what if you were traveling with a family? That pushes the requirements up to the upper mid-range family tier, which sits between $185 and $270 US dollars a night.
The top recommendations from the dossier here are the Chateau Royal Beach Resort and Spa at Antsevada, which offers massive 2-bedroom family apartments with kitchens. And as we'll see with food prices, a kitchen is a lifesaver.
Oh, absolutely essential.
Or if you are out on the Isle of Pines, the Our Lodge Beach Resort. And it's worth noting to the listener, these aren't just random picks from a hat. The research shows these are TripAdvisor's #1 and #2 ranked hotels in all of New Caledonia for 2026.
They are heavily vetted. And finally, for those seeking a premium, fully catered experience, we have the luxury 4-star and resort tier. This ranges from $206 to well over $400 a night. The standout property here is the DoubleTree by Hilton Nouméa Ilo Mitra Resort.
Right, this is TripAdvisor's third-ranked property, but the location is what makes it wild. It sits on its own tiny, private coral islet off the coast of Nouméa, featuring actual overwater bungalows and restaurants.
Overwater bungalows are the dream.
Yes. Interestingly, despite the luxury positioning, the source data shows 4-star deals for this specific property, dropping as low as $206 a night recently, likely due to that desperate push to get tourists back. Also in this tier, the dossier says to keep an eye on Le Méridien Nouméa, which is currently scheduled for a refurbished reopening.
So the landscape ranges from $55 on a tribal reserve to over $400 on a private coral islet. But we must factor in the seasonality we discussed earlier because it shifts these averages.
Right, the high and low season difference.
Exactly. The broader context is that high season pricing, which hits from September through November, averages $185 a night territory-wide. But if you travel in the low season, from June to August, that average drops slightly to $180 a night.
That's barely a drop.
The price difference isn't massive, but critically, the low season offers significantly better availability at the most sought-after properties.
Okay, so you've navigated the seasons, you understand the land rights, you've secured your bed, and you've dropped your bags.
Yeah.
Now, you have to eat. And navigating the food scene in New Caledonia requires balancing incredibly high French grocery prices with deeply rooted Kanak traditions.
It's a tricky balance.
Let's talk about the supermarket surcharge, because I am looking at these grocery numbers from the dossier, and they make absolutely zero sense to me. Help me understand this economic paradox.
If you walk into the major French supermarket chains in Nouméa, places like Casino, Carrefour, Chion Casino, or Leader Price, you are going to see familiar French stock. The aisles look like they belong in Lyon or Paris.
Sounds amazing.
It is, but the prices reflect the brutal reality of Pacific shipping lines and local monopolies.
Exactly. Let's look at the contrasts. A standard, beautiful, fresh French baguette, just $1.50. It's perfectly subsidized, culturally protected, and cheap.
Which is great.
But if you want a 1.5-liter bottle of plain water, that's $1.70. It's more expensive than the bread. Want a 6-pack of the local #1 beer, which is brewed right there on the island? That will set you back $17.
Ouch.
A kilo of New Zealand beef mince is $21. 200 grams of imported French cheese starts at $7.50. And a single liter of local milk is an astounding $3.40.
The contrast between the 1.50 baguette and the $17 local beer is the perfect illustration of their economic ecosystem. The French government heavily subsidizes essential cultural goods like flour and bread to maintain the standard of living.
Right, bread is sacred.
But the raw materials to brew beer must be imported at great cost, and the local brewery operates as a virtual monopoly, allowing them to set extremely high margins. Furthermore, the local agricultural sector for dairy and beef is small, and it just cannot compete with the economies of scale seen in places like Australia or New Zealand, hence the 3.4 milk.
So you are paying a massive premium just to buy groceries. But while the supermarkets are pricey, the research points out that eating out is where your daily budget can truly hemorrhage if you aren't careful.
Absolutely. If you sit down for a standard main course at a nice brasserie along the Baie de Citron waterfront, you are going to pay between $33 and $52 just for the entree. It is undeniably expensive.
Wait, if I'm paying $50 for a main course, plus $17 for a 6-pack of beer, dodging cyclones and navigating a post-riot political landscape, why wouldn't I just take my family to a slick resort in Fiji where everything just works and the drinks are cheap? What is the culinary payoff here?
The payoff is the quality and the unique hacks available to those who know where to look. You don't have to eat at the waterfront brasseries every night.
Okay, what are the hacks?
If you pivot to a casual Vietnamese banh mi, which reflects the deep Vietnamese community in Nouméa, the cost drops to between $7.50 and $11, and the ultimate local market move. Head down to the Port Moselle morning market.
Oh, I read about this.
You can buy plates of incredibly fresh, straight-off-the-boat tuna sashimi prepared by local fishermen for just $14. It is about knowing how to deploy your capital efficiently.
That sashimi sounds amazing. But the culinary experience here is not just about French imports or local fish markets. It is also about deep cultural immersion. The dossier highlights that if you are staying at one of those tribal gîtes we discussed, you absolutely have to experience a traditional Kanak bougna.
The bougna is central to Kanak culture. It is not just a meal, it is a whole event. It typically consists of chicken, fish, or pork combined with yams, sweet potatoes, and taro bathed in fresh coconut milk.
Sounds incredible.
Oh, it is. All of this is tightly wrapped in banana leaves and then steamed for hours over hot stones buried deep in the earth.
If you pre-order it at a tribal sheet, the dossier notes it costs about 28 US dollars. Think about that value proposition. You are paying $28 for a 3-hour preparation process that culminates in a 40-minute communal feast with the local family. I will take that over a sterile $100 hotel buffet any day of the week.
It is the ultimate authentic experience. And discussing the bougna brings us to a fundamental concept that is vital for anyone visiting.
This is crucial.
Yes, the bougna is just one part of a much larger, complex cultural framework. When you step off the main island of Grande Terre and onto tribal land, places like Lifou, Marais, or the Isle of Pines, you are operating under a completely different set of rules. We must discuss the absolute rule of la coutume.
Yes, the research leans heavily into this, and I want to be clear with you, the listener. This is etiquette that actually matters. This isn't just a polite suggestion buried in the back of a diet book about how to hold your fork. This is a hard societal boundary.
It is the bedrock of Kanak society. La coutume, or custom, is the traditional protocol of respect and exchange. When you enter clan land, you must perform la coutume.
What does that actually look like?
This means you present yourself to the clan chief, or a designated representative, and offer a small token or gift. The dossier notes this could be a length of culturally significant cloth, a crisp $10 US note, or a small pouch of tobacco. You must do this before you enter their land, before you swim in their ancestral waters, and before you fish.
So it's basically an entrance fee, like tipping a tour guide.
No, that is exactly the wrong way to think about it, and thinking of it as a transaction will get you in real trouble. Think of it less like buying a ticket and much more like presenting your passport at a border crossing.
Wow, okay.
The clan chief isn't a service worker or a park ranger. He is the sovereign authority of that land. The gift is a symbol of your respect for his authority, and his acceptance of the gift is a symbol of his permission for you to be there. If you skip this protocol, you are simply not welcome, you are trespassing, and you will be asked to leave.
That is a phenomenal analogy. It completely shifts your mindset as a traveler. You go from being an entitled consumer who bought an airline ticket to being a humble guest asking for permission to exist in their space. I think that level of friction actually makes the travel experience so much richer.
It grounds you in the reality of the place.
And on a completely different, much more mundane note regarding etiquette, the dossier has a quick, hard rule for the French side of the island regarding tipping. Don't do it.
Yeah, save your money.
This is a French territory, which means the service comprise law applies. A 15% service charge is automatically included in the price of your meal by law. The staff are paid a living wage. Leaving extra cash on the table is unnecessary and culturally out of place.
Understanding this complex mix, the high French expenses, the supermarket subsidies, the Kanak customs, and the tipping rules, directly informs how we can calculate a realistic daily budget for you. And more importantly, it exposes the logistical traps that constantly ensnare first-time visitors. If we look at what you are actually pulling out of your wallet every day, the research splits trips into 3 distinct tiers.
Let's break down those tiers. If you are traveling on the low-budget tier, the data shows you are looking at an absolute floor of $110 US a day. That budget assumes you are sleeping in a $55 tribal grate, you are eating those subsidized supermarket baguettes for picnic lunches, you are taking the local buses instead of taxis, and you are only paying for a structured tourist activity maybe every 3rd day.
The mid-tier, which we identified as the sweet spot of the market, sits at roughly $235 US per person per day.
Which is pretty reasonable.
It is. That budget buys you a solid 3-star hotel base like the Ramada Nouméa or Hotel Kubugni on the Isle of Pines. It allows for 1 sit-down restaurant meal a day. It covers your half of a $65 a day rental car split with a partner, and it gives you enough breathing room for a daily activity like a snorkeling trip.
And if you want the high-tier experience, you are spending $520 or more per person per day. That gets you into the overwater bungalows at the Doubletree or the premium rooms at our lodge, a la carte brasserie dining for every meal, and maybe chartering a private boat on the lagoon for the afternoon.
Sounds amazing if you can afford it.
But as the dossier points out, knowing your daily budget is only half the battle. You have to aggressively protect that budget from three massive, specific logistics traps that are actively waiting to ambush you.
These are the structural pitfalls of the destination that catch almost everyone off guard. Let's analyze the underlying mechanism, the painful reality, and the specific fix for each of the three named traps in the source material. Trap number 1, the Tantuta transfer trap.
Oh, this one is brutal because it hits you when you're most vulnerable. The mechanism here is based on geography. As we mentioned, La Tantuta International Airport is 31 miles away from the city center of Nouméa. Many of the international flights, particularly those cheap Air Cologne promotional fares, arrive late at night.
Yeah, they get in around midnight.
By the time you clear customs, the affordable $25 ARC and sealed shuttle bus has stopped running.
And the reality of this trap is devastating for a budget. You land, you're exhausted from travel, you walk outside expecting to find a public bus, and the terminal curb is just empty.
A traveler's worst nightmare.
You are officially stranded in the middle of nowhere at midnight. Your only option is to jump into one of the waiting private taxis, which will instantly vaporize $100 to $125 of your carefully planned budget before you even see your hotel bed.
So how do we avoid it? The fix is entirely about advanced planning. You must pre-book that ARC and SEAL shuttle online days before you even board your flight, or you must coordinate a private transfer directly through your hotel reception. Do not assume you can figure it out on the curb.
Trap number 2 is what the source calls the ferry versus flight trap, and it specifically applies to traveling to the Isle of Pines.
This one is sneaky.
It is. The mechanism here relies on a false economy. Budget-conscious travelers look at the Betticoat 2 passenger ferry and see a return ticket priced around $100. They compare that to the cost of flying and think it looks like a steal.
Right. I'm looking at that ferry price right now, and $100 return sounds great. I love being on the water. Why wouldn't I take the ferry?
Because you are gambling your entire itinerary on the temperament of the Pacific Ocean.
Right.
The reality is that the ferry only runs 3 days a week, and it is highly susceptible to the weather. The waters between the main island and the Isle of Pines are frequently hit by massive southerly swells. When those swells roll in, the ferry company issues sudden day of cancellations.
Which means you wake up, you pack your bags, you head down to the dock with your cheap ticket, and the boat isn't leaving. You are stuck in Nouméa. You miss your prepaid, non-refundable hotel night on the Isle of Pines.
The domino effect is awful.
And in an absolute panic to salvage your trip, you have to rush to the airport and book a last-minute flight on the domestic carrier, Air Caledonia anyway, which will now cost you upwards of $210. You end up paying for the useless ferry ticket, the expensive last-minute flight, and you swallowed the cost of the lost hotel night. It's a disaster. What is the fix?
The fix is to remove the weather gamble entirely. Do not rely on the ferry for a tight schedule. Book a flight on Air Caledonia departing from the domestic Magenta Airport, and note that this is a different airport than the international Tantuta Airport.
Good clarification.
Secure a morning outbound flight and an afternoon return flight to maximize your time. Treat any potential savings from the ferry as a bonus for locals with flexible schedules, not as the foundation of your international itinerary.
Excellent advice. And that brings us to trap number 3, the custom fee trap. We just spent a lot of time discussing the diplomacy of la coutume, but this trap is about a much more practical day-to-day issue regarding cash flow.
Yeah, this one catches everyone.
The mechanism here is that many of the most incredibly beautiful free natural sites, the hidden beaches, the limestone caves, the natural swimming pools, are situated squarely on clan land. The local tribe rightfully collects an access fee to maintain the area, usually somewhere between $4 and $13.
And the painful reality of this trap is that tourists who have been surviving in the capital of Nouméa, simply by tapping their credit cards at French cafes, take a flight to the outer islands and arrive at these remote, sacred sites with absolutely zero physical cash.
None at all.
They get to the famous Sacred Rock at Connemara Bay or the stunning Jokin Cliffs on Lifou, and the tribal guardians simply turn them away.
It is heartbreaking. Imagine traveling all the way across the Pacific, taking a domestic flight, driving a rental car to the edge of a cliff, and you cannot walk the final 50 feet to see the view because you don't have a crumpled $5 bill in your pocket. They do not have a square reader out in the jungle.
They do not. The fix is remarkably simple, but you have to prepare before you leave the capital. You must go to an ATM in Nouméa and withdraw enough cash so that you can carry approximately $45 worth of small Pacific franc notes per person for every single day you plan to spend on the outer islands.
That's a great baseline rule.
That small stack of cash is your literal passport to the natural wonders of the territory.
But beyond protecting your wallet from taxis and access fees, we need to talk about protecting yourself. What is the absolute reality of physical safety, scams, and solo travel in New Caledonia in 2026? Because we started this deep dive talking about riots and collapsed governments.
Objectively, according to the latest data in the dossier, the archipelago has fully reopened to international travelers. There are no blanket restrictions in place, the primary tourism zones are secure, and the cruise stoppers are operating as usual.
That's reassuring.
However, as we discussed at length, the political calendar dictates a high degree of situational awareness. Because the Bougival reform collapsed in April, and the provincial elections are mandated to occur before June 28, the explicit, non-negotiable advice is to avoid the Nouméa city center during that election weekend. Protests or political gatherings could materialize very quickly and disrupt transport.
Right, avoid the political flashpoints. But let's talk about a random Tuesday in August. On a day-to-day basis, practical safety looks a lot like it does in any small, slightly economically depressed French city. Violent crime directed against tourists is exceedingly rare. What you actually have to watch out for is opportunistic property crime.
Yeah, petty theft.
The research highlights that car break-ins are incredibly common, specifically targeting the beachside car parks at Onzivada and up at the popular Ointoro lookout point.
The rule there is universal but often ignored. Never, ever leave a single item visible in your rental car. Not a towel, not a charging cable, nothing.
Keep it totally empty.
For solo female travelers, the data suggests a generally comfortable and secure experience in central Nouméa, as well as out on the slower-paced Isle of Pines and Lifou. However, strict caution is advised regarding the outer, more economically disadvantaged suburbs of Nouméa, specifically areas like Montrevel and Rivière-Salée after dark. It is simply about knowing the geography of the city and which neighborhoods to avoid at night.
And what about health and medical infrastructure? If I get sick on a remote island, what is the protocol?
The healthcare system operates to a very high French standard, which is a massive plus compared to other Pacific nations. If you are a European Union citizen, the hospitals in Nouméa accept the European health insurance card, ensuring you are covered.
But for the rest of us?
For our American and Australian listeners, reciprocal Medicare agreements do not extend to New Caledonia. You must carry comprehensive travel insurance that includes medical evacuation, just in case you are on an outer island.
And daily health risks, like bugs or water.
From a daily health perspective, the tap water is perfectly safe and drinkable in Nouméa. But the source explicitly advises strictly sticking to bottled water when you are out on the outer islands like Lifou or Marais to avoid stomach issues. Also, dengue fever, a mosquito-borne illness, flares up significantly during the wet season. Packing high-quality, tropical-strength repellent is absolutely non-negotiable.
All right, so we've covered health and physical safety. But what about scams? Are there any specific local hustles that target tourists that people need to be aware of?
There are two very specific, named scams detailed in the source material that prey on a tourist's lack of local knowledge. First is the closed museum taxi detour.
Oh, I've seen this in other countries.
A taxi driver will pick you up, and when you ask to go to a major attraction like the Bougival Cultural Center, they will claim it is unexpectedly closed today due to a holiday or maintenance. They will then helpfully offer to take you to a special local shop instead. That shop, of course, pays the driver a hefty commission for bringing you there to buy overpriced souvenirs.
Classic. The old bait and switch. It happens in Bangkok, it happens in Paris, and it happens in Nouméa. You just have to politely insist they take you to your original destination. And the second scam.
The second involves the traditional meal we discussed earlier. It is the inflated tourist price bougna scam. Because the preparation is complex and it must be ordered a day in advance, some unscrupulous operators will quote you double the standard rate for a bougna simply because you are a foreigner who doesn't know any better.
Which is exactly why the dossier gave us the baseline price. Knowing that a standard fair price for a bougna is roughly $28 protects you from this markup. If they ask for $60, you know you're being scammed and you can walk away.
Exactly. Information is your best defense.
So if you can navigate the complex political landscape, if you dodge the wet season cyclones, manage the staggering French grocery prices, honor the deep Kanak customs with your cash on hand, and avoid the taxi scams, what are the actual payoffs? And equally important, what are the honest disappointments? Let's look at the highlights and the heartbreaks of the destination.
The highlights are genuinely world-class and totally justify the logistical effort. Top of the list in the dossier is snorkeling the Piscine Naturelle on the Isle of Pines.
Describe this to me because the name translates to natural pool, which sounds nice, but why is it world class?
Imagine a massive, crystal-clear saltwater pool, completely separated from the open ocean, but continuously refreshed by the tides. It is completely ringed by towering, ancient Araucaria pine trees, which look almost prehistoric and blindingly white sand.
That sounds like a painting.
You pay that $4 custom fee to the local tribe we talked about, and then you have free access to swim with tropical fish and corals in one of the most visually stunning, pristine locations on Earth. It is completely unique.
That sounds absolutely incredible. And we already mentioned the bougna lunch at a Lifou tribal gîte, spending 3 hours watching the preparation for a 40-minute feast that offers a genuine cultural connection you simply cannot buy at a manicured mega resort. What else makes the highlight reel?
Another massive highlight is the Chibo Cultural Center in Nouméa. It was designed by the world-famous architect Renzo Piano, who designed the Shard in London.
Wow, serious architects.
The center features these incredible, soaring modern interpretations of traditional Kanak huts made of wood and steel, blending seamlessly into the coastal landscape. It costs just $9 to enter, and it is a genuinely world-class architectural and cultural experience dedicated to the indigenous heritage.
But the source material is brutally honest, and we must balance those incredible highs with the realities of the disappointments. This is not a perfect paradise. First on the heartbreak list, the Nouméa nightlife post-2024 is incredibly thin.
It is a shadow of what it was. Several popular venues, bars, and clubs along the Ansei-Vada Strip remain permanently closed following the unrest and the subsequent economic downturn.
Oh, sad, really.
The area effectively empties out and shuts down by 10 p.m. If you are a traveler looking for a vibrant all-night party scene, you will absolutely not find it in New Caledonia right now.
Another major heartbreak is the weather lottery. As we touched on heavily, if you roll the dice and book between November and April to save on vacation days, a cyclone doesn't just ruin your tan, it cancels your inter-island flights for days, completely destroying a carefully planned multi-island itinerary and leaving you stuck in a hotel lobby.
It's just not worth the risk.
And here is a disappointment that creates massive friction for our U.S. and Australian listeners, the language barrier.
Yes, this is a significant point of friction. Outside of the large international four-star hotels in the capital, English proficiency is very patchy. You cannot assume people will simply switch to English to accommodate you.
They won't just know it.
No, the official language is French, and the local languages are Kanak. You need to download a robust translation app that works offline, or start aggressively brushing up on your high school French. It becomes a genuine stress point when you are trying to negotiate complex transport logistics or handle an emergency without a shared language.
So, knowing all the pros and cons, the stunning lagoon versus the high prices, the incredible culture versus the language barrier, how does New Caledonia actually stack up against its direct competitors in the South Pacific? Let's run a comparison using a specific baseline scenario from the dossier.
Okay, let's look at the numbers.
A family of 4 traveling for 7 nights. In New Caledonia, doing a standard loop that includes Nouméa, the Isle of Pines, and Lifou, the total cost comes to approximately $5,850 all in.
That $5,850 figure is our anchor. Let's compare that directly to Vanuatu, which is an archipelago just 90 minutes to the north. Vanuatu is slightly more expensive for that exact same family trip, coming in at roughly $5,950.
So the price is almost identical. Why would I pick Vanuatu over New Caledonia or vice versa?
You pick Vanuatu if you want raw, visceral, budget adventure. Vanuatu offers experiences like standing directly on the rim of the violently active Mount Yasser volcano on Tan Island, feeling the heat and hearing the explosions.
Okay, that sounds intense.
It is incredibly rugged. But in Vanuatu, you sacrifice the high-end French gastronomy. You do not get access to the massive UNESCO-listed lagoon, and the luxury accommodation tier is much, much thinner.
Okay, what about the undisputed heavyweight of the Pacific, Fiji? Fiji is just 2 hours east of New Caledonia. But for that exact same family of 4, taking a 7-night trip, Fiji will cost you an eye-watering $8,200.
It's a huge jump.
That is a full 40% more expensive than New Caledonia. Why is the premium so high?
You pick Fiji if you want a guaranteed, frictionless, highly polished resort week. Fiji has dramatically more flight options from across the globe, and their tourist infrastructure is incredibly slick and heavily developed.
It's easy mode.
Exactly. The staff speak perfect English, the kids' clubs are legendary, and everything operates seamlessly. But you pay a massive financial premium for that polish, and more importantly, you sacrifice the unique, slightly gritty French-Melanesian cultural blend that makes New Caledonia so fascinating. Fiji is easier, New Caledonia is more complex.
Which brings us perfectly to the final verdict matrix. With all the data, all the flight costs, the grocery prices, and all the political realities laid out on the table, let's run this destination through the filters for every specific type of traveler, based entirely on the hard source data. I will call out the traveler profile, and you give me the verdict.
Sounds good.
First up, the backpacker.
The verdict for the backpacker is yes, with strict conditions. The tribal gîtes we discussed at $55 to $95 a night are genuinely affordable and offer a culturally unique experience you can't get in Southeast Asia.
But the catch is,
However, the high costs of the necessary inter-island flights and those massively inflated French supermarket prices will absolutely push your daily spend past a normal backpacker budget. You must expect a firm $110 a day floor. It is only worth it if you specifically desire a Melanesian experience with French infrastructure, and crucially, if you are fully willing to commit to the respect and practice of La Coutume. If you just want to party on a cheap beach, go to Thailand.
fair enough. Next profile, the mid-range traveler.
The verdict here is a resounding yes. This is the absolute sweet spot of the New Caledonia market. A budget of $235 per person per day buys you a solid 3-star base in Nouméa, covers your rental car, allows for nights on the outer islands at places like Lifou Village or Koh Bunny, and covers daily brasserie meals.
That's a great value.
When you factor in those incredible Air Calen promotional fares starting at $370 return out of Brisbane, 2026 is mathematically the best mid-range value window we have seen in a decade. You are getting maximum value before the new taxes hit.
Profile 3, the family.
Also a definitive yes. At $5,850 for a 7-night 3-island loop, it is demonstrably significantly cheaper than going to Fiji. It offers incredible geographical depth and access to the world's 3rd-largest lagoon, which features calm, safe waters perfect for kids who love to snorkel. The source data specifically calls out the Chateau Royal family apartments with their kitchens as the single best family booking available on the island right now to help control food costs.
Okay, profile 4, the luxury traveler.
The verdict is yes, with conditions. Properties like the Doubletree by Hilton Ilo Matrar and Our Lodge Beach Resort do deliver a fantastic experience. However, the supply of true luxury at this top end is very tight.
It's not Bora Bora.
Exactly, we have to be honest. The 5-star market in New Caledonia simply cannot match the sheer, overwhelming overwater bungalow perfection of Bora Bora in French Polynesia, nor can it match the ultra-slick, seamless resort polish of Fiji's Yasao Islands. It is worth it if, and only if, you specifically desire high French service standards in a complex Melanesian setting, rather than pure, unadulterated, frictionless resort luxury.
And finally, the 5th profile, the digital nomad.
The verdict is a brutal, definitive NO. The logistics just do not support it in any way. You are dealing with very patchy 4G networks outside the capital and expensive French-grade broadband costs within it. There is no specific digital nomad visa equivalent to make long-term stays easy.
And the cost of living would drain your account.
Most brutally, yes. The cost of living in Pacific francs will completely outpace established nomad hubs like Bali or Da Nang by a factor of 3 or 4. You are looking at $2,400 to $3,100 US a month just for a mid-range apartment, basic groceries, and limited co-working spaces. You are paying luxury tier rates for mediocre digital infrastructure. Skip it entirely and go to Southeast Asia.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We started this deep dive looking at a destination that is actively recovering from severe riots, navigating collapsed political agreements, and facing imminent, tense elections. It is a place that requires you to actively dodge wet season cyclones, pay $17 for a 6-pack of local beer, and carry physical cash to pay tribal chiefs for the fundamental right to swim in the ocean. When you stack it all up like that, it sounds exhausting.
It does sound exhausting if you are looking for an easy vacation.
Yeah.
But if we connect all of this logistical data to a larger philosophical point about why we travel, it is this. The very friction that makes New Caledonia challenging right now is exactly what preserves its incredible authenticity.
That's a great point.
The political transitions, the language barriers that force you to struggle in French, the absolute requirement to physically hand a gift to a Kanak clan chief and look him in the eye. These are not bugs in the system. They are the system.
They are the destination.
In an era where global tourism is becoming increasingly homogenized and sterile, where every luxury resort in the world feels exactly like the last one, we have to ask ourselves, is a little logistical friction actually the true price of a genuine adventure?
That is an incredible thought to leave on. You don't get the world's third largest UNESCO lagoon and a slice of the French Riviera entirely to yourself by taking the easy, frictionless road. The window of opportunity is wide open right now due to the promotional pricing, but walking through that window requires you to be an active traveler, not just a passive tourist. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, and I highly encourage you to weigh these brutal logistical facts against your own personal travel style before you book.
If this gave you the honest verdict you needed, follow the show. New episodes drop every day.
That is the honest verdict from Phil and H.